You surface from the underground at Piccadilly Circus,
Mind the gap.
making your way through the glittering lights of London's West End. You take a turn down a quaint-looking street into the notorious neighborhood of Soho. The lights are up, the crowd is buzzing, and you just stepped into the best seat in the house. Welcome to The Big Smoke, a variety show podcast. I'm Kevin Bennett, and I'll be your guide through this experience of comedy, conversation, and community. In today's episode, we're taking to the skies. In a rare moment with both feet on the ground, we meet with seasoned balloon pilot Robin Batchelor to talk about the history, thrill, and wonderfully whimsical nature of hot air and gas ballooning. Now, if floating through the sky in a giant wicker basket doesn't tickle your fancy, don't worry! In this week's Parish Notices, we're highlighting other modes of transportation that might surprise you by how much connection they create en route. And before I lift off for my own flight of fancy this summer, it felt wise to check in with our resident GP, Dr. Quack, and his hysterical and historical medical procedures. And don't skip out early. We end the episode with the perfect Victorian parlour game for your summer barbecue. Catch the sausage! But first, let's pop into our local for a quick pub quiz. This round, a history of basket cases. First up, in which century was the very first untethered manned hot air balloon flight? Next, Jean-Pierre Blanchard and Dr. John Jeffreys were the first to cross the English Channel by balloon. Several times their balloon dipped dangerously close to the water, forcing them to lighten their load in order to fly higher. What was the more embarrassing item they had to release into the channel? And finally, in July of 1987, Per Lindstrad became the first person to cross the Atlantic Ocean in a hot air balloon. But he wasn't alone. He made the trip alongside which famous entrepreneur? Think you know the answers? Share this episode with your friends and see how many you can figure out. All will be revealed at the end of the episode. It's time to welcome our first guest. Please say hello to balloon pilot Robin Batchelor. Welcome to the Big Smoke Variety Show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. So, you are president of the British Balloon Museum and Library. You're a professional balloonist with over 40 years experience, logging 4,000 hours of flying in 30 different countries. So, when I had the idea that I wanted to speak to someone all about the world of ballooning, I came upon the perfect person, so I feel very blessed today.
Yeah, you couldn't have done better, says he modestly.
So I've sadly never been in a balloon before, never been in a hot air balloon or a gas balloon.
Really? Okay.
I remember when I was a kid, I don't know if we were in some sort of tropical place, but I was on a holiday, it was somewhere warm, and I remember we were sitting in a cafe or a restaurant and seeing one in the sky and thinking to myself, that looks absolutely delightful and quirky in all of the different ways.
That's how a lot of people start. They see one in the sky. It seizes your attention in a magic sort of way. It's like being like beside a whale or a huge old Victorian steam engine. They're very, very powerful, but they're very gentle and you feel safe beside them.
There is the stillness of it is very beautiful. So tell me, what is your story? What drew you into ballooning in the start?
Well, it was quite by chance. I saw a picture on the front page, this is about 1970, of the local weekend Telegraph supplement. And it was of Don Cameron, the very well-known balloon builder. And he was going to go up in the sky. And there was this picture of him standing beside the basket with the inflated balloon. And my little heart think, God, he's going to go up in the sky in that basket. And it really appealed to me. So I rang him up. He lived in Bristol. And he said, oh, come on down and I'll take you flying. And he took me for a flight and that was it. And I fortuitously met another guy who was just collecting his first balloon and he needed somebody to follow him. And I said, well, I can read a map. I can reverse a trailer. I'll help you. And so I was very lucky in meeting the right people. And I had a job at the time operating computers. This is in 1970. They were the size of this room.
Oh my gosh.
Well paid, and I've got a logical mind. It suited me. But I very quickly realized that ballooning was a lot more fun. So I left my job in computers and I joined this wonderful chap, Tom Donnelly, and we set up another company, competition to Cameron's, called Thunder Balloons. And I built balloons for 3 years in London and learned every aspect of it, which I'm so grateful for. It really helped me a lot. And after 3 years, I got my license. I thought, I don't want to build them anymore. I just want to fly them.
I want to go back just to that first moment. You saw an image of a balloon in a magazine. You rang up this famous balloonist. What do you remember about that first flight?
I remember it was early morning and we drove into this field. It was all dew.
This is in Bristol?
In Cirencester.
In Cirencester,
yeah, he chose a nice big park, which was very convenient. And there were other people there as well. And there were 2 balloons, both built by Cameron, very early balloons. And it was just so dramatic to this naive, young, innocent boy. They had the balloons were already laid out in this dewy, cool, cold morning. And I got my shoes soaking wet. And in those early days, there was no motorized inflation fan, which makes it so much easier these days. So we had to...
It makes it fill up faster.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And safer in a way.
Okay.
And easier, a lot easier. So we started to flap the mouth of the balloon to sort of get some cold air in the balloon. And then one of us had to be Cremation Charlie, and we had to stand in the mouth of the balloon with a broom and hold the fabric up so it wouldn't get burnt.
Oh my gosh.
And then the pilot would turn the burner on and slowly the balloon would fill.
So how many people were there with you? Don Cameron was there.
Yes.
You were there.
And there must have been another 10, 12 people, I suppose.
And how old were you at this point?
Oh, there's 3 sorts of people. Those that can count, those that can't count.
Sometime in your 20s kind of thing?
Yeah, I was 20, 21, 22, something like that. Yeah.
And so tell me about the moment that you first lifted off. What do you remember about that?
Well, it was just magic. It was nothing like I'd ever imagined. There's lots of unfamiliar sensations. As you lift off the ground, a lot of people say the same thing. It's as though the ground is leaving you. You're still standing on the bottom of the basket and the earth's just dropping away. And as you climb up into the sky, there's no movement at all, no sensation of movement. You always go with the wind. And we just floated off across Gloucestershire and I was just fascinated by it. It was peaceful, very quiet. And I suppose I looked around at how it was made, but the main thing was it was just so new. And I'd never known about aviation. I built model airplanes as a boy. Yeah. That was the only aviation I'd ever heard of.
Well, when we first connected and I told you that I'd never flown balloons before, flown in a balloon before, rather.
Yeah.
You told me this beautiful way of describing. I'd love you to share that with our listeners. How would you describe what it's like to be up in a balloon to someone who's never done it before?
This is the lovely thing, and I think it was Don Cameron that said it. If you have to describe ballooning to somebody, you can't describe it. It's like ice cream. You have to taste it.
I think that's absolutely beautiful and just encapsulates, to me, the adventurous spirit, but also the playfulness that it feels like ballooning.
It is. That's the word, playfulness. It suited me, and I didn't know at the time, but in time I increasingly realized it was the perfect means of self-expression. And the more I read about the 19th century balloonists, they were all showmen. And I'm a natural showman. And it was the perfect fate moves in mysterious ways. And so I ran away, joined the circus and never looked back. And I've been doing it ever since.
You've done over 40 years in balloons. You've done so many different things. I was fascinated reading your bio. You know, the people that you have flown, presidents, royalty, movie stars, billionaires, almost everybody has been with you in your balloon. And some really impressive people. You've flown President Carter, Robert Redford, Richard Branson, Prince Edward on his 21st birthday.
Yes.
What has been maybe any unexpected or funny reaction to being up in the balloon from people, or sort of from all of these really well-known people? Has anyone reacted in an unusual way or responded to it, or had a moment with you up in the basket up there that you can't reveal to anyone else? Yeah.
Well, you've reminded me how fun it was when Robert Redford came and joined us. I was flying in Africa in a lovely tented safari camp over the Masai Mara called Governor's Camp. And we had huge balloons. By then, I'd got a lot of experience. And so there were 16 people in each basket. And he wandered up to the two pilots. There were two balloons, lots of people. And he said, Captain, can you tell the rest of your passengers just to treat me like an ordinary guy? And we said, yeah, sure, okay. Hop in. And we had a lovely flight across Africa and landed and had a lovely breakfast out in the terrain. And he wandered up to me afterwards and he said, God, Robin, you Brits sure know how to ignore a guy, don't you?
So he didn't want to be ignored that much. It was almost too much.
He shot himself in the foot. Everyone completely ignored him.
And what is it like flying? I was thinking you flew a U.S. president. Was he president at the time?
Yes.
And so that must have had a lot around it. I mean, did you have to have Secret Service inside the basket and all sorts of things?
Not in the basket, but you would laugh. As soon as he came down to the camp, we heard that he loves birds. So immediately we got the bird fundi, the expert, to fly down to be his chum. And he was wandering around the camp. And suddenly Dave Richards, who is this bird man, he put his arm around the president and said, Look, President, there's a hoopoe, a rare bird. And you should have seen these specials. They were talking into their microphones. They were reaching for their guns in a suit in Africa. I said, guys, relax. It was so funny.
Oh my gosh. You've had such a storied career. Talk to me a little bit about how that came about. So you started a company that built balloons.
Yes, Thunder Balloons.
Tell me what happened after that then.
Well, I obviously wanted my license. So there's a good structure within Britain. All aircraft have to obey the rules dictated by the Civil Aviation Authority, and they would grant you a license once you've got a certain number of hours. So you get a student pilot's logbook, and you clock up the hours with an instructor. And then when he thinks you're good enough to fly, you do an examiner's flight. And if he thinks that you're ready to fly, you do a solo flight. And that's always a surprise because you always go much higher than you're used to because there's nobody else in the basket.
Right.
And so ballooning is full of unfamiliar surprises, which is what I love. And then having got my license, you try and fly a balloon and buy a balloon. And there's a good second-hand market these days, but they cost about the same as a car. So people tend to get a syndicate together. You always need friends to help you, not only inflate the balloon, but to follow you and pick you up wherever you land. You never know where you're going to land.
I'm so curious about that, actually, because there are balloon races. You have gone across the English Channel 4 times.
Yes.
So if you say you never know where you're going to land, how do you make sure you don't land right in the middle of the English Channel?
Well, of course, you learn how to avoid disasters like that. And it's very simple. I mean, if you can drive a car, you can fly a balloon. It's very easy to fly.
Okay.
And we take the same exams as any airplane pilot in air law, navigation, meteorology, and human performance. And of course, the meteorological understanding these days is so much easier. Back in the 70s, you'd chuck a bit of grass in the air, and if it flew this way, you think, okay, and you get your crew and you lay the map out on the bonnet, and you think, well, I think I'm going to go this way. We'll try and land near that school where the kids can help roll it up.
And you're following the flow of the wind and things, basically, is what it is?
All you can do. Yeah, the only control you have with a balloon is your height. So with a hot air balloon, you've got a burner and you have tanks of propane gas strapped into the corners of the basket. And we get through enough gas on an hour's flight. You could probably cook on that at home for about 6 months.
Wow. Now tell me, I was just thinking when you talked about the hot air balloon versus gas, I was reading up on you and I didn't even realize this, that there are gas balloons, hot air balloons, different mechanics of making this work. So tell me, what's the difference between them and what ones are more popular now versus...
Well, the very first balloon ever was invented in 1784 by the Montgolfier brothers. And they were paper manufacturers in France. And one day they ran out of licorice, all sorts, and threw the paper bag on the fire, and it went up the chimney. And they could see the smoke. So they thought it was the smoke that lifted the paper. So they made a toy balloon, and that worked. They built a much bigger one, and they put a little basket underneath it, and they sent up a sheep, a duck, and a cockerel, who all survived. Sadly, the sheep trod on the duck's wing on the way out of the basket, and that was the first aviation accident. But they were much encouraged, so they then built the first man-carrying balloon, and in 1783, actually, getting my dates wrong. And so it was made of paper and linen.
Wow.
Why it didn't catch fire, heaven only knows. But
And what was burning?
They had a bonfire. They were burning straw and sticks and
just
wool.
literally a bonfire.
Very basic supply of flame,
Wow.
yeah. So how they survived, goodness knows.
Is it true? I read somewhere that how they got started or their inspiration was because there was some murderer was being granted permission to try this out.
Yes.
What's the story of that?
The Montgolfier brothers didn't really want to fly it themselves, so they asked Louis Quinze, or whichever it was in 1783, to get permission for a convict to go up in the first ever balloon. And so the king said, yes, of course, we, and if he perishes, well, it doesn't matter. And if he survives, we will give him a free pardon. But there were two very ambitious French noblemen in the French court,
Wow.
the Marquis d'Arlande and Pilatre de Rosier, and they persuaded the king to let them be the first people ever to go up in the air.
So we don't know if the murderer ended up going up or not.
No, he didn't. No, he's probably still languishing in a French jail.
He didn't get a chance. He's in the
hot air balloon was so cumbersome, of course. So the very next year, another Frenchman called Jacques Charles, he invented the gas balloon. And you fill it up with a lighter than air gas. And today we are familiar with hydrogen and helium. And so the gas balloon became the balloon that you see all of those beautiful engravings throughout the rest of the 18th century, all the way through the 19th century and well into the 20th century, when about halfway through, in about the late 50s, the modern hot air balloon was reinvented because of the advent of propane gas as a convenient fuel and nylon as a fabric, a lightweight but strong nylon fabric.
And so now it's nylon fabric with propane gas.
Yes, yeah.
And so would you call that a gas balloon or a hot air balloon?
No, that's a hot air balloon.
That is a hot air balloon.
And the gas balloon is very, very popular, and they fly regularly with hydrogen.
Okay.
Normally people take a sharp intake of breath and hydrogen, isn't that dangerous? And it's no more dangerous than petrol in the back of your car, as long as you obey the rules. And it's much cheaper than helium. And you get more lift with hydrogen.
And is the gas balloon, is it a different experience in terms of sound? Or like when you're up in that balloon, is it silence or is there the sound of the gas or the flames?
Well, that's exactly what it is. In a hot air balloon, you punctuate your conversations with the noisy burner. You reach up and turn it on once or twice a minute, maybe a bit more often.
You do, okay.
And it's noisy, but you get used to it, and it's the silence you remember. And with a gas balloon, it's completely silent all the time.
Wow. Okay, let's go into some more of your incredible stories. You've flown in Africa for a period of time. You've flown across the Alps. Let's start with just off the top of your head what you would say is your maybe favorite memory of a flight.
I'd say flying across the Alps in the winter. There's an annual balloon meet in a lovely town called Châteaudet, just near Gstaad. And the last week of January, everyone's invited over there. And in the valley, it's very stable, easy winds, and you fly up and down the valley, and it's just wonderful. You know, it's a winter wonderland looking at these lovely mountains. And every year there's a race. It's called the David Niven Long Distance Race, because David Niven lived in Châteaudet and he's buried there, and he loved the balloons. And so he presented a big silver trophy for the winner every year. And in my early days, I used to watch these adventurous pilots from Germany and Austria and France go up and up and up and away across the Alps. I think, good luck, mate. Because up there, you go to maybe 20,000 feet and you need oxygen.
Gosh. So you're wearing oxygen?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Warm coat.
At what height do you need oxygen?
Anything after 10,000 feet.
Okay, wow. So they're 20,000.
Yeah.
I mean, an airplane flies at what, 30, 40?
30,000
30,000 feet. So you're up high at 20,000.
Yeah. And today's radios, we have to be in close contact with the air traffic controllers, and they're very supportive and helpful.
Yeah.
But one year I saw one of my mates do this race. I thought, good luck. If you can do it, I can. And so it was an interesting lesson in I slowly gained my experience and gained a bit of ambition. And that flight from Châteaudet, I went up to 20,000 feet, right across the Alps, blue sky, warm sun. I'd take my coat off. And I landed in Italy after about 5 hours. we went about 200 miles, I think. And it was just the most magic flight.
You know, there's something about it. I'm visualizing it while you're describing it, and I'm thinking part of what makes me love the concept of it so much is we talked about the playfulness, but also the lack of control in a way.
Yeah.
Because of course you follow the winds and things, but as you said, you only have control over going up or down.
Yeah.
And so you're in this beautiful, colorful balloon, which also has this kind of childhood connotation of sort of fantasy, a kid's holding a balloon at a birthday party. You're flying up in a balloon over the Alps and landing in Italy. Who knows where you're going to land. So there's this beautiful peacefulness and adventure to it. Now, tell me, I'm sure you have had maybe some mishaps or crash landings or things. What is a story that comes to mind that was...
I've got more gray hairs in my whiskers than you.
More of an adventure, a little bit of an uneasy moment.
Yes.
Have you had any of those?
Oh, yes. I mean, inevitably you're going to, especially a guy like me. I'm quite... adventurous and ambitious. And the wind is the most important thing. When you decide whether or not to fly, you look very closely at the speed of the wind on the ground. And if it's more than about 10 knots, you think, do I really want to fly? And I used to think, God, if I can get the balloon in the air, I can get it back down again. So I had a bit of a reputation of being a bit of a gung-ho, but it did demonstrate how safe ballooning is. And enormous fun. And in all my 4,000 hours, I reckon the most painful landing I've ever had was flying into a hornet's nest in the Brazilian jungle, doing a commercial. They towed me out to sea, dropped the rope, boat disappeared, and I had to fly back to the jungle. And it came right to the edge of the sea. There's nowhere to land. And I saw a clearing. So I thought, right, I'll get into that clearing, because you don't want to tear your balloon. It's very easy to tear the nylon on a branch or a fence. So you're always looking for a big open space that's harmless to lay the balloon down. And I thought, well, I'm going a bit quickly. I'll slow the balloon down so I can fit into that clearing. So I put the basket through the treetops just to slow me down a bit. Bang, straight into a hornet's nest.
In the trees?
In the treetops,
God.
I mean, one hurts. And they were in my neck, down in my ears, up my armpits.
All over.
And that flipping hurt.
And you were still floating when this happened. You were still up flying in the air when this happened.
Trying to beat them off. I tried turning the burner on to scare them away, but then of course I'd go up, so I had to turn that off again. So,
as you're describing all of these things, like when you said I slowed myself down, I'm thinking, how did he slow himself down? Well, you just went into the trees.
Yeah,
to the
or
tree
hedge.
branches.
The British Isles are covered in hedges. And that brings us, of course, to the importance of the landowners. They are most wonderful, wonderful guys and women, of course. And we couldn't do our sport without the support and goodwill of the landowners. So we always learn about their crops. And we always get permission before we take off, of course, but you can't get permission to land because you don't know where you're going to land.
Oh, yeah.
So you choose a field, you keep looking ahead, and you see a nice big grass field, and you think, is there a wire across it? If there is, you don't land anywhere near power wires.
Right.
Make sure there's no crop, and make sure there's no livestock. And so you come into land in this lovely grassy field, and of course the gate's locked. So you get to learn, how tall the gate is, because you might have to lift it all over. And this is the fun of it. It tests your initiative a lot.
What has been have you ever had any surprising reactions of landowners or people on the land when, as you say, you can't really plan where you land? So has there been any shocking reactions? What are you doing in my field?
Oh, yes. I mean, mischievously, I'll tell my passengers, here comes the farmer. If he's got one barrel on his gun, just limp a bit when you. So attack is the best form of defense. So I always march over and greet him and say, "Look, we've done no damage. Is it all right if we come and pick up the balloon?" And I say to the girls, if he's got two barrels on his gun, burst into tears. But that's a bit mischievous. We very rarely have any problem. And over the years, we've learnt to make a note of any farmer that would rather we didn't land. He might have a pig farm, and they're very sensitive to the sound of a burner. So we've learned a lot, and we share the information amongst all the pilots. We carry maps with these farms marked on them, so we don't disturb any farmers that would rather we weren't there.
And I'm sure I can imagine seeing the beautiful, colorful balloon coming down would be a delight to some people.
Oh, yes.
What's your favorite part of the balloon culture or the community? You were talking about the landowners. What after all these years of being involved in it competitively, business-wise, you've also flown in many films and commercials. What's your favorite aspect of the culture and the community of ballooning?
You've hit it. It's the community. They're wonderful people and all sorts of people. There's no, you don't need to be strong. Just make sure your crew is strong. All you need to do is to be able to, it's judgment. And if I drive with somebody and they always come screaming up to the traffic lights and skid for the brake lights, they probably wouldn't be a very good balloonist. So you're always judging the rate at which you're going up and down. And balloons have momentum. That's the key thing to understand. So if you're dropping out the sky like a grand piano and you want to stop before you hit the ground, you put the burner on, you put a lot of heat in.
Yeah.
And that heat you have to judge. So quite often people, when they're learning, they come down and hit the ground and bounce up to about 1,000 feet.
Ooh. Wow.
And it's all perfectly safe. You fly
They just
in.
go back up.
Yeah.
Wow. Is it more common to land, are the landings pretty gentle or not? Or
Depends entirely on the pilot.
Much. Yeah.
I naturally wanted to land gently,
Of course.
make my legs. But sometimes you go to a balloon meet and people are all coming into the same field and they come down and go bang straight into the field. And I thought, good. And he just, or she, they hadn't bothered to use the powerful burner to round out perfectly. And each pilot's different, and you apply the finesse to different levels.
Now, you need relatively good weather to fly a balloon, but you've mentioned that, people have flown balloons. You've gone across the Channel 4 times. People have flown across London. What is the most unusual place that you've flown a balloon that people wouldn't think you'd be able to fly a balloon there?
Probably in film work. In the Hot Air Balloon Company, which we set up in 1974 in order to just exploit the commercial aspect of ballooning, mostly advertising. But we soon got into film work because they're very popular in films. And the first feature film we had to do was called Green Ice, where we had to go to Mexico City and fly balloons called cloud hoppers, little one-man balloons where you don't have a basket. You sit in a harness with a little tank of propane between your shoulder blades and a little burner above your head. 3 of us in 3 balloons had
how close to your head is this burner?
Oh, about 2 feet.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the burner's right above your head. The propane's on your back.
Yeah.
What are you sitting in? Like a harness kind of
thing? A little
thing?
harness, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's just you and the balloon.
Yeah. And you get the Lord's Prayer down to about 11 milliseconds when you land. You wear good stout boots.
Wow.
But we had to fly off the top of the Citibank skyscraper in the middle of the night.
Where? What city?
In Mexico City.
In Mexico City.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And we were the robbers. It's called Green Ice because we were stealing all the emeralds from the top floor vault.
Wow.
So if you use a search engine and look up cloud hopper.
And so you're on the top of this skyscraper and you're taking the balloon up.
Yeah.
And what happened? How was filming?
Well, there were 3 of us, and they wanted us at an angle of about 30 degrees from the horizon. And the special effects guys unwound a huge drum of wire, which we were attached to. Each 3 pilots had a buddy line keeping us connected. And off we go into the night sky, flying. And they were very small balloons. I was the heaviest of the 3 pilots, and I would last, I think, 28 and a half minutes. And flying on the top of the building, we were sort of just getting buoyant, and we got towards the edge of the building, and suddenly we were 500 feet in the air. And I remember now thinking, oh, crikey.
Feet dangling down.
I know. It was
And it must have
memorable.
been above tons of skyscrapers in the city.
Yes.
Or
although
this
that was
area?
the biggest and the best. That was the tallest
In
and
Mexico
the best
City.
and very modern.
Yeah.
And the star of the film was Ryan O'Neill.
Okay.
And I was his double.
Wow.
And he was once walking across the other side of the road and he shouted over to me, God, Robin, you look more like me than I do. And I've had other doubles, Piers Brosnan, Alain Delon. And the most recent film we made or helped make was called The Aeronauts, which was set in the 19th century. A fabulous film, and it starred Eddie Redmayne and Felicity Jones. Just great fun. It's always enormous fun because it demands this initiative. You're always trying to work out how to do things. The director wants the balloon to fly from A to B. The wind's balloon flying from A to B, B to A.
Yeah.
So you sit down, have a cup of tea, and work out how to do it.
And also, film schedules are so tight and specific, and it almost seems like a hot air balloon on a film would be at odds with each other. It's like the two opposite things, because time is money in movies, and you got a specific thing on a specific day. But with ballooning, you're at the mercy of the gods. But also with that film, The Aeronaut, it's a historical film, right?
Yes.
About a famous. Was it going across the channel?
No, he was a meteorologist called, what was his name? James Glacier. And in the 19th century, he and his co-pilot, Henry Coxwell, went to something like 30,000 feet with no oxygen.
Wow.
And so one of them went insensible. They hadn't invented unconscious. And so the other one had to open the valve at the top of the balloon, which is attached to a long line. He had to open that with his teeth. And so it's a true story. The Aeronauts, I recommend seeing it.
And were the balloons historical?
Yeah.
So
it was a gas balloon, so they're made out of gas-proof materials. Back in the day, it was rubberized cotton, and it was a version of that these days. And the whole balloon is captured by a beautifully made net, and from the net, the gas balloon is suspended.
Wow. What's your favorite story, like historical story of ballooning? We've talked about the first balloon. There's some great stories of, Larry Walters with cluster ballooning on a lawn chair.
Yeah.
What story comes to mind when you think of, your favorite story of ballooning through history?
Well, in 1906, Gordon Bennett Jr. was shipped off to Paris because he blotted his copybook in New York, where his father published the New York Herald. So he published the newspaper in Paris. He wanted readers. So he presented a big silver trophy to whoever could fly the furthest. So this is 1906, and we're talking gas ballooning. And the flights those early gas balloonists made were amazing. They'd fly 70 hours.
Wow.
So you're in a basket, just two pilots, the size of a small kitchen table or, a small 4-person dining room table. And it's like camping in the sky. And they'd fly right across Europe and land in Russia, Scandinavia. And there have been some epic flights. And that race is still held today, every September. So keep an eye open on your favorite search engine. And each balloon now carries a tracker. And there might be 20 balloons, all take off from the same place, and the winner will be the person who flies the furthest. And I'm not sure which of the... I mean, there was an insanely ambitious flight just last year, I think, where all the balloons took off from France, and they went southwest towards Spain and Portugal. And the 3 leading balloons were very, very fiercely competitive. And the first one got to the very, very furthest peninsula. And they thought, that's the place to land, And he landed quite near it, which he thought was good enough. The second placed one came in. He went past that peninsula, out to sea. His crew had told him, don't go out to sea, come down to sea level, the wind will blow you back. And he won the race, or they won the race, a man and a woman, just by insanely, really superior knowledge of and their team back at base. The Gordon Bennett Balloons race has a fantastic tradition, and they really liaise very closely with the air traffic controllers throughout Europe. And their team are letting off little toy balloons to know exactly which way the wind will blow. It's fascinating.
So speaking of modern balloon races or events, you talked about the Gordon Bennett balloon race. I know there's a very famous event in Bristol, but where are some of the places around the world that still have events that if people are listening, wherever they are, they can maybe check it out?
Well, in France, the next biggest one, they have hundreds of balloons in Metz. That's usually in September when all the crop's taken in. So there's loads and loads of fields to land in. That's a very popular destination.
And is that a race, or is that just an event where everybody goes up? And
there's always a competitive element. But the true competition pilots, we in Britain developed the competition balloon club many, many years ago, and we have the annual championships. And there's a wonderful group of young pilots today, and one of the young pilots is the world champion. The element of a competition is to lay a great big colourful cross about 10 miles downwind, and you try and fly your balloon there and drop a marker on that cross with your number on it and your name. And the winners,
when you're up in the air still.
That's it, yeah. And the lower you are, the more accurate you can be by throwing the marker.
Wow.
And sometimes there's a hare and hound. So one balloon takes off, they all wait 5 minutes, and then the rest take off, and whoever lands nearest the hare wins. And when I started in 1970, The Hare and Hounds was the most popular competition. I was fiercely competitive and still am. I love winning.
It's kind of amazing to me when I was doing a bit of research thinking about this and after we first chatted that the first balloon flight was in the 1700s because I was thinking, the Wright brothers flight was in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
this is just me kind of musing off the top of my head that balloon flights must have been the first, if not one of the first, forms of human-made flight.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So there's something kind of incredible about that. The 1700s to
It's
have.
wonderfully romantic.
Yeah.
And being French, of course, in powdered wigs and lacy cuffs, I just love it all.
I can't imagine.
And they were very festive. And back then they were still learning. And some of them would have great big feather oars to try and row along and move left and right. All useless. They all went downwind.
Now, I have to, the other thing is we've talked about so many aspects of your incredible career. You were chosen to fly Prince Edward for his 21st birthday at Windsor Castle Estate. So similar to flying a president, what was the parameters around that?
Well, I'd already tethered him. So when it's too windy to fly, or when for whatever reason you want to stay tethered to the ground, perhaps to advertise whatever you're advertising, we were at the Bristol Balloon Fiesta, which has grown into the most magnificent event at the end of every year. He came down as the VIP, and I was chosen to tether him. So there's a picture of me tethering him. So I'd already just going up and down 10 feet, 20 feet. But when I was given very rare permission to fly him from Windsor Castle at his 21st birthday party, with a permission to land within the castle estate. I mean, it's an enormous estate, because you're in the Heathrow control zone.
Yeah.
So going back to the rules, we in balloons, we're allowed to fly in uncontrolled airspace, which is freedom.
Right.
And if you want to go in controlled airspace, you carry a radio and you ask permission from the air traffic controller. So I had this map, and mercifully, it was blowing a gale and we couldn't fly. And so I was invited to this simply fabulous party. Good gracious, they really know how to run a party. There was this sort of Batman always stood quite near me. And when my champagne glass got down to about half level, there he'd be. And drop more, sir. And as soon as I said thank you to him, he'd disappear.
My
It
gosh.
was magic.
The magic of being the balloon man and being in Windsor Estate. Tell me, I don't want to miss this amazing part of your journey, which is that you spent several years flying passengers in Kenya around a safari camp. Tell me about that experience.
It was just the most wonderful. I'd by then gained a lot of experience with ballooning, and I started a lot of advertising ballooning. A lot of our jobs would be to leave home in May and get home in September, fly at all the agricultural shows throughout the British Isles. Enormous fun, lots of balloons doing it. We became a great big long family, and we had enormous fun, and we all helped one another, and we were competitive and getting up to mischief. But after a while, my ambition, I wanted to do something more. I was getting a bit complacent, and you mustn't do that in aviation, safety first. And I recognized I needed to take the next step. And so in the winter when I had no work, I knew this lovely family that ran Governor's Camp right on the River Mara in the Masai Mara Game Reserve in Kenya. And they said, they'd already just started to offer balloon flights. A Frenchman had done it. So I went out there and started flying, and it was difficult because there was huge balloons with 16 people in the basket. And being a showman, I naturally like to give people a personal touch.
Yeah.
And it was just fantastic. And all nationalities, and the Japanese were wonderful. They loved the sunrise. So I used to get a basket full of Japanese girls. And I'd fly along, and I'd go quite high so they'd see the sunrise before everybody else did. And they squeal with delight. There's something about Japanese seeing the sunrise. They all celebrate it. Then I came back down again, carried on flying, and they saw a second sunrise. And so there were endless ways of celebrating ballooning, sharing it with these people who'd never flown before.
And how did it work with, obviously you were looking at incredible animals. So were there specific logistics so you don't land in a lion's den, something like that,
Well, you learnt a great deal about them. And so although I've landed within sight of lions and quite near elephant. They're not interested in you. They want to go and eat a gazelle. And so you learn, out of respect for the animals, you don't land near them. And we were so lucky with the weather. The wind always blew the same way, parallel with the Rift Valley. And we followed the River Mara that meanders around, full of hippos, of course. So you'd come down low over the river to see the crocs and the hippos. Wow. And all the game, all the big five, the leopard, the lion, the cheetah. My favourite's the cheetah, the fastest animal in the world.
It must have been amazing to see it from up high.
Yeah.
Really get a sense of how much ground it can cover when it's
Absolutely.
running so fast. Yeah. What do you think? I mean, it's such the stories, I just get wrapped up in them, and it's such a beautiful thing to imagine your journey and the ability to go on one of these trips with you or with anyone. What lessons can one or have you learned from a life of ballooning?
To be honest, I've in 4,000 hours, in 40 or 50 years, I've learned more about people than anything else, to be honest. And I've had enormous fun. And we're lucky in Britain. We've got the British Balloon and Airship Club. That's the authoritative body that looks after all the legal stuff and organises events. And that's the club you belong to. It's the bbac.org. That's the website. And you can learn all about it on there, and you can join the club and start to learn. But the history of ballooning, I've always loved history. I've inherited that love from my parents. And so naturally I started to try and buy early ballooning books, which broke the bank. But I've loved collecting them. And so now I'm the president of the British Balloon Museum and Library. And that was started in about 1979 by a group of enthusiasts just to protect and preserve the history of ballooning and British ballooning. Because now we're in a modern era which is so different from when we started back in the late 60s and early 70s.
And there's great resources on that website in terms of history as well as recordings of other balloonists. So tell us what that website is for people if they want to check it out.
It's called the British Balloon Museum and Library. So we're bbml.org.uk. And there's a lovely education pack on there. So we're inviting teachers to actually use that pack to teach their children all about ballooning. And it's really popular. We're really pleased about that.
And you said you learned about people. What would you say is maybe the biggest thing that you learned about people going up? Are people often afraid going up, or are they more excited? Are they? What has been?
They're apprehensive.
Yeah.
Very, very rarely are they afraid. I have had 2 people in all the thousands of people I've flown who really did have real live vertigo. And I said, what I usually do is to try and look at the map inside the basket to sort of keep cozy. And then I say, see this church on the map here? That's the church down there. So I get them to look out of the basket, then back on the map. And within 5 minutes, they're leaning over the side, waving at their friends. So I've learned how to help people get the most out of it. And there were one day in Africa, there were 8 Americans one side and 8 very different Americans the other side of my basket. And there was a lion down there, and they were all rabbiting away. And I said, listen. And they all shut up. And they said, what? Exactly. That's the silence. Just listen to the silence. So I've had to learn how to diplomatically help people make the most of the flight.
I mean, in a world where we're so disconnected and we're living in our devices, and I think, if anything is going to get people to be present and see each other and see the world around them, back to this playfulness of the balloon might be the thing that doesn't. It's definitely something that I want to do.
Yeah.
Have you been to, sort of a random question, but have you been to Finsbury Park Station in London and seen the beautiful balloon mosaics on the tube? So if you go to, this is one of the things that gave me this idea actually was months ago, I found myself in Finsbury Park Station. So anyone who's living in London or passing through listening, I just think it's just a lovely little moment. If you get out at Finsbury Park Station, pay close attention to I don't know if you'd call it the tunnel, the wall of the tunnel behind the train. So when the train leaves, look at it, and there's some beautiful mosaics of vintage hot air balloons.
Know that. Thank you, because I've actually launched my balloon from Finsbury Park many years ago, landed in Godstone.
Beautiful.
And to fly in London, you need very special permission because
I would
it's
imagine.
Always filled with jumbo jets. But if you want to fly, you liaise with the air traffic controllers, and they say you've got to be clear of the area by 6 o'clock before all the commercial airliners come in.
By 6 p.m. or 6 a.m.?
Yeah, a.m.
Oh,
Best time of the day. Early
so you
morning.
go really early morning.
Early
Okay.
morning, yeah.
Wow.
And I think the most spectacular balloon flight across London was for the Lord Mayor's show. And I think some years ago we had, 45 balloons over London.
Wow. That would be such a sight to see.
We always need exactly the right weather, so we never know whether it's going to go ahead until the day before. And I think there's still a chance this year, what are we now, July, if you Google balloons across London Lord Mayor's show, hopefully the website will show up.
Is there anywhere that you haven't flown that you still would like to one day?
Yes. Yeah. Gosh, how long you got? I've never flown in Sweden. I've flown in Denmark and Finland. I'd like to fly in Sweden somehow. I'd like to fly in India. But nowadays there are balloons everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't be a novelty. And I was so lucky in my early days because each person that saw the balloon, it was a novelty. And that added to the experience.
Yeah. As indescribable as ice cream. Well, Robin Batchelor, thank you so much for joining us on The Big Smoke. It's been lovely chatting with you today.
Thank you.
When the bells ring out across the Big Smoke, it's time to wander out into the community for a much-needed dose of connection with this week's Parish Notices. Today, we're asking, what's your favorite form of transportation? Modes of transport usually just take you from one place to another. Whether it's the fast train or an all-night plane, we rarely connect on these journeys when we're racing to our destination. After our interview, Robin told me that the most dangerous thing about ballooning is spilling the champagne when you land. But if dangling under a giant balloon with a bottle of bubbly still makes you nervous, here are some other ways to transport yourself to a world of connection. Is it a boat? Is it a plane? Well, it's both, is what onlookers said in 1910 when Frenchman Henry Fabre achieved a successful liftoff of an aircraft. But not from the ground, from water. A first in the history of aviation. So would you try your hand at the marvel that is the float plane? These aerodynamic and aquatic inventions don't just get you from A to B. They connect you from the known to the unknown, cityscapes to pristine wilderness. Take Vancouver's beautiful coastal landscape, for example. This area, as gorgeous as it is enormous, is one near and dear to my heart. And there's no better way to explore it than on a float plane. Harbour Air, an airline whose float planes link the bustling downtown with the remote mountains, argue that traveling by seaplane is an incredible way to see where the city, the water, and the mountains meet. Starting in 1982, with just 2 small planes ferrying loggers and forestry workers through British Columbia's wild backcountry, Harbour Air has now grown into one of the world's largest all-seaplane airlines, not a jumbo jet in sight. Unlike the seatback screen on your Airbus A380, these float planes provide a new perspective. You connect with the crew, the pilot being only a few feet away. You connect with the water and the landscape in a way only possible by float plane. But do you prefer your thrills to be more grounded? Perhaps the humble rickshaw is more your speed. These cultural time machines with their open frames and rhythmic pace provide a slower and more intimate journey through the hearts of our cities. A staple of modern inner-city transportation, the rickshaw was invented in Japan in 1869. Starting as a human-pulled vehicle whose use was reserved for the wealthy and the powerful, the rickshaw has evolved, with each iteration being designed perfectly to connect to the place in which they roam. Unlike the sealed-off world of modern motor vehicles, rickshaws strip away these barriers, thus creating a connection between traveler and city, and driver and passenger. Journalist Amanda Woods of the Daily Telegraph Australia describes the, quote, sensory overload on a rickshaw ride she took in India. There are so many moving pieces in the tiny alleyway, I can't begin to take them all in. and yet somehow my rickshaw driver anticipates their every move. We're weaving through an endless stream of rickshaws, pedestrians, bikes, food carts, dogs, and more, and he's still dodging potholes for a smooth ride. She adds, if my rickshaw driver told me he could see through time, I'd believe him. In a world rushing by, the rickshaw reminds us, you aren't just passing through a place, you are participating in its rhythm, its smell, its beautiful chaos. Not quite scratching that quirky itch? Try the bodacious penny-farthing. These towering Victorian bikes aren't just a mode of transport, they're conversation starters. Everywhere you ride, you'll turn heads, break the ice, and create connections. These famously lopsided Victorian bikes got their name from British coins. The large front wheel resembled a penny, with the tiny back wheel a farthing, a now extinct coin worth a quarter of a penny. Being as iconic as they are impractical, riding a penny-farthing is sure to create an impression. As you ride past, people emerge with a smile on their face, says penny-farthing devotee Tom Close. If you're on a normal bike, you're a nuisance. But a penny-farthing, you're a nuisance and of interest. According to the Isle of Wight County Press, Mr. Close is one of a group of enthusiastic penny-farthing riders who took the Isle of Wight by storm in May. The big bike outing was a social ride celebrating shared history, connection, and an opportunity to raise money for charity. On a penny-farthing, presence is a necessity. These wobbly wonders lack traditional gears and do not agree with potholes or sleeping policemen, meaning daydreaming is a disaster waiting to happen. It isn't about transport, it's a performance sparking smiles, questions, and connection with everyone you encounter. But shiver me timbers! Are you drawn to the mysterious open seas instead? Then, tall ships might be the vessel for you. Once the backbone of intercontinental exploration, these majestic ships offer something that modern transport cannot. Human connection, almost as deep as the deep blue sea. Rather than referring to a type of vessel, a tall ship describes a large, traditionally rigged sailing ship. Whilst many different classes of ship are considered tall ships, one icon is the clipper. A sleek, fast-sailing vessel developed in the early 19th century, designed to carry cargo quickly over long distances. One of the most famous, the Cuddy Sark, was launched in 1869 in Dumbarton, Scotland, for the China tea trade and eventually became a museum ship in Greenwich. So if you were born with salt in your veins, why don't you step aboard an active clipper, the Stad Amsterdam, a majestic tall ship that sails not just across oceans, but through history itself. A faithful 19th century style clipper built with modern comforts. But you won't find cinemas or casinos on this cruise, just polished teak, wind in the sails, and the thrill of a real working tall ship. Built in the Netherlands and launched in 2000, the Stad Amsterdam was inspired by the great clippers of the past and has since circled the globe, retraced Darwin's voyage, and trained a new generation of seafarers. Far from the hum of engines and the monotony of a ferry, tall ships invite you to trade autopilot for adventure. From hoisting the sails to dropping the anchor, tall ship voyages transform strangers into crewmates. Families are forged in the sea spray. And that's what it's all about. Transporting ourselves as a way to connect with our surroundings, with each other, and ourselves. Can't fly a float plane, rent a rickshaw, pedal a penny-farthing, or sail a tall ship? That's okay. Connection doesn't have to be quirky. Maybe it's just as simple as hopping on a new bus route and watching the world go by. Something I started doing this year on the occasional quiet Sunday afternoon is grabbing a coffee, getting my headphones tuned into a podcast or music playlist, and I would hop on a random bus near where I live and just ride through London, letting the bus route introduce me to new neighborhoods. Sometimes I would hop off when I saw a nice spot to explore. Other times, I simply ride to the end and then get back on and ride back home. There's nothing like the top floor of a London double-decker bus to make you fall in love with your city all over again. Find out more about these unconventional forms of transportation in the show notes. And tag us in your unconventional travel photos this summer. We're on Instagram at The Big Smoke Variety. Oh, all these modes of transportation seem incredible. But before I choose how I'm traveling to Canada this summer, I think I should have a quick visit with the doctor. Wandering through the streets of London, history peers at us from every corner. Yet few people realize how close they are to the weird, wonderful, and sometimes terrifying history of medicine. Whether it's sipping lattes in Camden next to the very spot where the Black Plague broke out, or sauntering out of Tottenham Court Road Station only to find yourself face to face with the site of St. Giles Hospital for lepers. Centuries of medical history surrounds us. So let's go for a checkup. A few years back in time, down the murky Blackfriars Lane in the Old City, and visit with our resident GP, Dr. Quack.
Dr. Quack has always aimed to help as many people as possible. He hopes to leave a legacy of his medical knowledge by training the doctors of the future. All the medical procedures mentioned are real medical procedures used throughout history. Good morning. I'm Dr. Quack. I'll be your, I suppose your teacher today. But hopefully medicine will be the real teacher. Sorry, what was your name again? Duncan. Right. And you're a fourth year. Right. Well, Duncan, if I've learned anything about the medical profession, it's listen to the patient. They are your best resource. Listen to what they need, and then gently ease their pain. Shall we get started? Hello, Debbie. Send Mrs. Smythe in, please. Hello, Mrs. Smythe. I'm Dr. Quack, and this is my medical student, Duncan. He'll be assisting me today. How can we help? Headache, is it? Not a problem. Just take a seat. So, Duncan, listen to what they need and gently ease their pain. Now, go and get that drill. Mrs. Smythe, Duncan is just going to do a bit of trepanning. Yeah, could you just point to the spot that hurts? Don't panic, Mrs. Smythe. All will be fine. Now, if you just grip the chair. Yeah, like your life depended on it. Now, you're starting to shake, Mrs. Smythe. And I cannot emphasize this enough. That is literally the worst thing you can do. Once the procedure is over, you will feel such relief. It will be like a new lease of life. If you just bite down on this stick. You're going to want to bite a bit harder than that. Of course, there are risks involved, Mrs. Smythe, but doctors like us have been doing this for centuries. Obviously not Duncan, it's his first time. Okay, Duncan, if you just kneel on her thighs and start drilling into her skull. Please don't wriggle, Mrs. Smythe. That's it, Duncan. Bit more pressure. Bit more. Bit, and she's dead. Is she? Yep. Oh, bother. Yep. Yeah. Bit too much pressure. Dash. Okay, Duncan. Well, bloody good effort. I guess pop her body in the corner and we'll deal with that later. Debbie, could you send the next one in? Hello, Mr. Tursk. Dr. Quack, and my medical student, Duncan. What can we do for you today, Mr. Tursk? Oh, gosh, if I can just stop you for a second. Sorry, it's your teeth. They're, God, how can one put this delicately? Grotesque? Well, we can do something for the yellowing. Oh, Duncan, any ideas? An abrasive tooth powder? What are they teaching you? That would be terrible for the enamel. No, Duncan. Mr. Tursk should go to bed with a cup of urine in his mouth. Obviously. Well, his or someone else's. The origin is not important. That yellowing will be gone in no time. Obviously, your breath will reek like a privy. So no change there. No, I'm teasing, Mr. Tursk. Now, why did you come in today? Warts? Around the genitals? Right. Grab a bag of mice from the shelf, Duncan. Now, Duncan, tell Mr. Tursk how to use the mice. Exactly right. Slice them in half and whack them on the old warts. Gone in no time. Also, if any of those teeth are playing up, grind up one of the mice and rub it on the tooth. Thank you, Mr. Tursk. Sometimes medicine is as easy as giving a man a bag of mice, Duncan. Now, as a doctor, it's good practice to try and remember your patients and their ailments. So the next time they come in, you can ask them how they're doing, remember their name, etc. It shows care. Sometimes a little nickname or something to have in your mind as a little memory aid. What do you think for Mr. Tursk? No, Duncan. I don't think we should call him Old Warty Pissmouth. That doesn't really show care now, does it? I'd say to myself something like, Mr. Tursk, we treated him warts and all. Nice little thing, and I'll remember him by that. Debbie, send Miss Rowan in, please. Now I remember her by a little nickname, Toadface. Hello, Miss Toad. Rowan. Miss Rowan. Sorry. Lovely to see you. Did the ear infection clear up? Did the ear infection clear up? Oh, shame. Yes, I can see it's missing. Oh, I thought you were wearing earmuffs, but it's just your hair clumped up in all that blood. This is Duncan. He's a student helping me today. What's the problem? Oh, hemorrhoids. Right. Well, if you'd like to remove your lower garments and bend over the table, we'll take a look. Now, Duncan, in this line of work, you will see people at their most vulnerable right in front of you. And that is when dignity and professionalism... Jesus Christ. Oh God. Oh, it's quite bad, isn't it, Miss Rowan? I said it's quite bad, isn't it, Miss Rowan? Well, ideally, the best treatment is to rub the hand of a dead person onto the hemorrhoids. But sadly, we don't have a cadaver's hand in stock today. Sorry, Duncan? Oh, of course, brilliant boy. Drag Mrs. Smythe over here. You're in luck, Miss Rowan. Fresh as a daisy, this one. Now, just rub Mrs. Smythe's hand over Miss Rowan's hemorrhoids, Duncan. Yeah, and poke them with her fingers. And now the back of the hand. Lovely. Just move it around as if Mrs. Smythe were testing the pile of a new carpet. Excellent. Right, Miss Rowan. Well, you should see some improvement in 4 to 6 weeks. All right, Miss Rowan, calm down. I didn't realise you were in such haste. Well, if you need a quicker fix, we can help, of course. Duncan, just grab that poker out of the fire. Bite this stick, Miss Rowan. Okay, Duncan, if you just move the red-hot poker towards the infected area. Easy does it. Too deep, Duncan! And she's dead. Jiminy cricket, Duncan. Whatever did you think you were going to find up there? Okay, well, pop them both back in the corner and we'll sort them out after we've had some lunch. To be fair, 1 out of 3 alive for the morning isn't bad. I think you're a very promising student. Now, have you ever heard about Dutch fumigation? Oh, it's a fantastic practice for reviving people who've passed out. Yeah, you simply take a lungful of tobacco smoke and blow it up the patient's anus. Oh, I do it all the time. Debbie, did we hear back from Mr. Tursk about his wart infection and died? Right. Next patient, please.
And that was our appointment with Dr. Quack. It's time to play Victorian parlor games. All games, from the Roman gladiatorial battles to a quiet round of cards or charades, are imitations of real-life situations. The activity of playing games is the expression of an instinct, for play is far older than culture, older even than prehistory. So here's our offering to you, a way to connect with your friends and family and have a bit of fun. Today's game is perfect for that family barbecue where you might have a few extra hot dog wieners laying around. It's Catch the Sausage. The goal? To catch the swinging sausage with your mouth, using neither fork, knife, nor hands. Only wit and well-timed lunges will serve you now. What you'll need: 1 cooked sausage or suitably sturdy meat substitute per player, a good long length of string, a clear space, and an audience willing to cheer and jeer in equal measure. Here's the setup. Tie one end of the string around the player's waist and the other securely around the sausage. The sausage should dangle in front of them at a length that allows it to swing freely down between the legs. Players must place their hands behind their backs and attempt to swing the sausage forward using their hips and momentum. Then, catch it in their mouth. No hands and no help from bystanders, though dramatic gasps and peals of laughter are encouraged. How to win the game? The first player to successfully catch their sausage in their mouth shall be declared the victor. For larger gatherings, you could hold heats and a final showdown, or add a timed element. Catch the Sausage was popularized during the twilight years of Queen Victoria's reign by ravenous Oxford undergraduates and misbehaving debutantes. It was famously banned from the royal yacht after a particularly unruly incident involving a flying Cumberland and the Archbishop of Canterbury. It's now time to reveal who's flying high and who's full of hot air, with our pub quiz round, a history of basket cases. First, I asked, in which century was the very first untethered manned hot air balloon flight? If you said the 18th century, you're right. In 1783, the Montgolfier brothers launched the first successful manned balloon flight in France, with 2 brave souls floating over Paris in a paper and silk contraption powered by fire. Just imagine explaining that to your insurance provider. Next, I asked, Jean-Pierre Blanchard and Dr. John Jeffreys were the first to cross the English Channel by balloon. Several times their balloon dipped dangerously close to the water, forcing them to lighten their load in order to fly higher. What was the more embarrassing item they had to release into the channel? The answer? Their clothes! This famous crossing was in 1785. After ditching cargo, scientific instruments, and everything else they could spare, they were still sinking. So, they stripped nearly naked mid-flight. It worked, but you gotta wonder what the French farmers thought when they saw 2 pantsless gentlemen floating in from England. Oh, mon Dieu! And finally, I asked, in July of 1987, Per Lindstrad became the first person to cross the Atlantic Ocean in a hot air balloon. But he wasn't alone. He made the trip alongside which famous entrepreneur? If you said Sir Richard Branson, you nailed it. Branson and Lindstrad flew the GUS-UK, a giant hot air balloon, from Sugarloaf Mountain, Maine to the Irish Sea, landing just off the coast of Northern Ireland on the 3rd of July 1987 after briefly touching down near Limavady. And fun fact, today's guest, Robin Batchelor, is the man who taught Richard Branson how to pilot a hot air balloon. Well, that's our show. Thanks for floating through the world of ballooning with us. You can find links to Robin's work and more information in our show notes. If you liked what you heard, share this episode with a friend, or leave us a quick 5-star review on your podcast app of choice. It really helps us grow and welcome more people into our little parish here. So here I go, off for the summer. Just realizing I'm not very flexible as I lift my legs over the edges of this wicker basket here. Okay. So how did Robin say this thing works? Am I supposed to take my clothes off? Oh, there we go. Whoa! We hope you have a lovely summer. Stay tuned for our silly season episodes coming out every week next month, and we'll see you for full episodes again in September.